The summons arrived in the standard form: Senate letterhead, gold sorveth seal, all 6 ratifying signatures in descending order of seniority. They had even included the procedural courtesy line at the bottom, the one that said attendance was voluntary, which everyone in the diplomatic corps understood to mean the opposite. I read it twice, folded it along its original crease, and placed it on my desk beside the other document I had been carrying for 2 months. The other document had no gold seal. It was printed on plain white stock, bound with a dark cover, and it carried 14 signatures of its own. I flew to Sorveth station on a trade hauler. No escort, no honor guard. That was my choice. I wanted to arrive the same way I had left, quietly, without ceremony, in a ship that no one would look at twice. I had left 14 years ago in the middle of the night. The Exile vote had passed at 3 in the morning, station time, by a margin of 41-7. I remembered the number because I had counted the abstentions first, then the dissents, then finally accepted what the arithmetic was telling me. High Arbiter Thesson had read the order aloud in that level, unhurried voice he used for all procedural matters, the same voice he used to call recess, or to confirm quorum, or to inform a delegation that its speaking time had elapsed. Earth's seat on the Interstellar Senate was formally vacated. Earth's signatory status under the Sorveth Accord was suspended pending remediation. Earth's commercial access to compact transit lanes was restricted to Class 4 humanitarian channels only. I had not said anything when he finished. I had gathered my materials, closed my case, and walked out. 7 delegates had followed me into the corridor. None of us spoke until we were off the station. What I had not told any of them, that night, was what I had been carrying in my coat pocket since the morning of the vote. The hauler docked at Sorveth station at 06:14. I cleared customs without incident, walked the long concourse to the Senate wing, and was escorted to the outer chamber by a junior protocol officer who had the careful, practiced neutrality of someone who had been told to treat me as a guest. I was not a guest. I had not been invited. I had been summoned, which is a different thing entirely. The outer chamber had not changed. Same curved white walls, same pale light from overhead panels that the sorveth called natural spectrum, but which always read slightly wrong to human eyes, slightly too even, too free of shadow. Same rows of curved benches along the perimeter. I sat and waited for the doors to open. I was not nervous. I want to be precise about that. I had been nervous 14 years ago. I had been nervous every day of the first year, and intermittently nervous for 2 years after that. And then something had shifted, the way weight shifts when you finally put it down on solid ground instead of carrying it, and the nervousness had not come back. The doors opened at 0900 exactly. The chamber was full. I had not expected that. A compliance hearing was normally a small proceeding: 3 arbiters, a recorder, the relevant parties. What I walked into was closer to a full session. The upper tiers were occupied. The gallery was occupied. High Arbiter Thesson was in his chair at the center of the curved dais, flanked by the full bench of 12 arbiters, their attending delegates arranged behind them in ranked order. The Sorveth senior delegate, Veth Oranis, had positioned himself at the first bench of the floor level, which was the position reserved for parties with a direct interest in the proceeding. They had staged this. They wanted an audience for the moment Earth came back, hat in hand. I set my case on the table assigned to me, opened it, and removed the bound document. I placed it on the table. I did not sit down. Thesson spoke first. His voice filled the chamber without effort, the acoustic design of the room built to carry exactly that frequency. Ambassador Kale, the Senate thanks you for your attendance. This hearing has been convened under Article 19 of the Sorveth Accord, concerning the status of suspended signatory parties and the conditions for remediation of standing. I said nothing. Earth has been in suspended status for 14 years, he continued. During that period, the Senate has observed certain activities that suggest Earth may have developed relationships and structures outside the Accord framework. The purpose of today's hearing is to allow Earth to account for those activities and to discuss the terms under which Earth might seek reinstatement. I still said nothing. I had learned, in 30 years of diplomacy, that silence in a chamber built for sound is a physical thing. It has pressure. It makes people feel it. Veteranis leaned forward from his bench. His species had 3 sets of eyelids, and all 3 were partially drawn, which was the sorveth expression for measured displeasure, the same expression a human would call barely concealed irritation. Ambassador, the Arbiter has addressed you. He has, I said. Oranis waited. The chamber waited. I heard him, I said. That was all I offered. The chamber did not fill back up after that, the way it had expected to. Thesson cleared his throat. A procedural reset rather than an involuntary one. Perhaps you could begin by confirming Earth's current status regarding the compact transit restrictions. I looked at the document on the table. I think it would be more efficient if you read that. We have not been provided with a copy. It's on the table, I said. The junior protocol officer who had escorted me in. A young sorveth, pale copper-sheened, clearly uncertain of the correct action, moved to the table, picked up the document, and carried it to the Arbiter's dais. Thesson accepted it without looking at me. He opened the cover. He read the title page. He read it again. I watched his attending delegate lean in, read it over his shoulder, and go still. The document was called the Instrument of Formal Withdrawal and Compact Establishment. It had been signed 14 years ago, 4 months after the Exile vote, on the day I understood what the Exile had actually given us. It had been ratified 12 times since, most recently 2 months ago, by the Dravosi Trade Consortium, which brought the total signatory count to 11 non-human sovereign bodies plus Earth. It was not a request for reinstatement. It was a notification. Thesson turned to the 3rd page, which contained the list of signatories and the date stamps of their ratification. His secondary eyelids drew fully closed, which I had never seen before. He passed the document to his left without a word. The Arbiter on his left read it and passed it further. The chamber had gone quiet in the way that large chambers go quiet when too many individuals reach the same understanding at the same moment, and none of them wants to be the first to speak. Oranis was not that restrained. This is not a recognized instrument, he said. His voice was careful, but it had an edge under it, the kind of edge that appears when someone is working very hard to sound certain. The bodies listed here, the Dravosi Consortium, the Kelrath Freehold, the Yenevar Assembly, they hold no formal standing under the Sorveth Accord. That's correct, I said. They hold standing under a different compact. There is no other compact with Senate recognition. The Kale Compact doesn't require Senate recognition, I said. It predates your jurisdiction over the outer transit corridors by 2 years. That was the clause that had taken the longest to draft. Our legal team had found the gap in the Accord's jurisdictional language, a narrow gap, but a gap nonetheless. And we had built the Kale Compact's foundational articles into that gap, with the precision of people who understood that if it was ever challenged, it would be challenged here, in this room, with exactly this energy. 14 years of building, 14 years of one conversation at a time, one trade agreement, one joint infrastructure project, one moment of sitting across a table from a Kelrath shipping director or a Yenevar colony administrator and offering something the Sorveth Compact had never offered them because the Compact's model had never needed to. The Exile had removed the one thing that had stopped us from making those offers. Under the Accord, Earth's commercial relationships were subject to Senate oversight. Outside the Accord, they were not. Thesson had reached the jurisdictional articles. I could tell because he had stopped moving. The transit corridors, he said, and his voice had changed. The procedural certainty was still there, but it was thinner now, working harder. The outer belt corridors fall under Article 31 of the Accord, any compact claiming right of passage. The Kale Compact signatories hold territorial claim over 7 of the 11 corridor junctions in the outer belt, I said. We surveyed them during the 2nd year of the Exile, while compact transit was restricted to humanitarian channels. The humanitarian exemption permits survey vessels. The Arbiter on Thesson's right said something to him in the Sorveth formal register, low and fast. I did not speak the formal register well enough to follow it. But I watched Thesson's face, and I did not need the words. Oranis was on his feet. This was a deliberate circumvention of the Exile order. The Exile order suspended Earth's signatory status, I said. It didn't prohibit Earth from operating in unsupported space. We had 14 years to operate in unsupported space. We found it very productive. A delegate in the upper tier, the Pelrath trade bloc, I thought, recognizing the blue and silver rank markings, stood up without being recognized. The Yenavar Assembly, he said. You have a ratified compact with the Yenavar Assembly. Since year 6, I said. They supply 3 of our primary agricultural processing nodes. I'm aware, I said. They mentioned it. Oranis sat down. He sat down the way people do when they are not choosing to sit down. Exactly. When their legs simply make the decision ahead of them. The 3 sets of eyelids were fully closed now. All 3. The document had made its way around the full bench. Thesson was holding it again, looking at the back cover, as though the back cover might contain something different from what he had already read. It did not. The back cover contained the Kale Compact's formal address for correspondence and the contact details for the joint secretariat we had established on Kelrath Station. What is it you want, Ambassador? Thesson said. He had dropped the procedural cadence. It was a genuine question. I picked up the document from the table, my copy, the one I had kept, and put it back in my case. We don't want anything from the Senate, I said. We came to notify you. The Kale Compact is in operation. Its signatories are sovereign. Its transit rights are established. We have no objection to coexistence with the Sorveth Accord, provided the Accord's jurisdiction remains within the bounds the jurisdictional articles actually specify, rather than the bounds it has grown accustomed to assuming. Thesson was quiet for a moment. Around him, the chamber held very still. You built this, he said, in 14 years. We had very clear parameters, I said. You gave them to us in writing. I closed my case. The walkout was shorter than I remembered. The doors were the same weight, the same resistance, the same pale light in the corridor beyond. I had walked out of this chamber 14 years ago into nothing. No framework, no treaty, no floor. I had been afraid of that at the time. I had thought that the absence of the Accord was a kind of falling. I had been wrong about what falling felt like. Somewhere behind me in the chamber, the arbiters were still sitting with the document. They had a long afternoon ahead of them. They would call their legal teams, and their legal teams would read the same jurisdictional articles I had spent 14 years reading, and they would find the same gap, and they would understand, by the end of it, that the gap was not a mistake. It was a property of the Accord's architecture, a property it had never needed to worry about, because no party had ever left the Accord voluntarily before. We had not left voluntarily. We had been voted out at 3 in the morning by 41 to 7. The distinction matters. It mattered to every conversation I had in those 14 years. In every room where I sat across from a Kelrath administrator, or a Dravosi trade director, or a Yenavar colony council, and explained what the Sorveth Compact had done, and what we had built instead. People who have been treated fairly consider their options. People who have been dismissed without cause remember it. The hauler was waiting at Dock 7. I boarded, stowed my case, and sat down by the window. Sorveth Station fell away in the viewport, the familiar curved hull, the Senate wing's white spire visible against the starfield. I looked at it the way you look at something you carried for a long time, and then finally set down. 14 years ago, they had voted on what Earth was worth and arrived at a number. They had been working with bad information. They had never asked us what we were building while they were not paying attention, and we had not told them, because they had not asked, and because it was not their business. It still was not their business. That was rather the point. The hauler made transit at 1340, and I did not look back.